What's up guys, my name's Brandon and the beta drought has finally ended as Apple just released iOS 15.5 beta 1 about a month after the last beta release, but this does also come just under a week after the last public release, which was 15.4.1 that dropped last week. But in addition to this iOS release, we also got the first beta of iPadOS 15.5, tvOS 15.5, HomePodOS 15.5, watchOS 8.6, and macOS Monterey 12.4. But in this video, of course, we're talking all about iOS and iPadOS and discussing what's new in the software, if anything, WWDC 2022, and what to expect from Apple next. So let's start by looking at the size of this update. So you can see here it came in at 5.42 gigabytes on my iPhone 13 Pro Max. The size is going to be very large if you're coming from a public release, like a 15.4 or a 15.4.1. So expect a very large update. That's how it is every time. That's not necessarily indicative of a lot of changes and a lot of features being added. So let's go ahead and check out the build number. Let's go to our settings, general, about 15.5. We can see the new build number here is 19F5047E. So we have an E at the end of the build number, which indicates we should have quite a few betas before the final public release. And then if we scroll down a little bit further to the modem firmware, you can see that has also been updated to 1.60.00. Alright, so now what's new here in iOS 15.5 beta 1? And as I mentioned in past videos, you should not be expecting any major new features or changes in this update. One, because iOS 15.4 brought a ton of features and changes to the iPhone. And number two, because we're on a 0.5, we're getting ready to see iOS 16. So Apple is not going to be pushing out major new features and changes right around the time of iOS 16. So for those two reasons alone, you should not expect many things to be changed here with iOS 15.5 beta 1. But the first thing I will say is the battery drain was fixed in 15.4.1, but if you did not update last week, this update right here, 15.5, should fix any type of battery drain issues that you were facing on 15.4. There's also a change to Apple Pay Cash in the Wallet application. So if we go into Wallet and go to our Apple Pay Cash right here, you will see we have two new buttons that say Request and Send. So this will just make it easier to request or send money via Apple Pay Cash straight from the Wallet application. And it seems that Apple is also looking to rebrand the iTunes Pass in iOS 15.5. So this was found in the code of 15.5 beta 1 by 9to5Mac, and it appears that iTunes Pass is going to become a new card called Apple Account. So it's basically a rebranding. And this card is going to be displayed in the Wallet application, just like the Apple Card and the Apple Pay Cash card. So now, instead of having to show a QR code when shopping at the Apple Store, you could just complete the purchase by using Apple Pay. Now, there was nothing I could see in the Wallet application, like when you go to the plus right here, there's nothing that indicates this is coming, but it was found in the code like I mentioned. So we should see something added here to the Wallet as time goes on and as we get closer to the final release of 15.5. And speaking of references in the code, there are also references to the Apple Classical application. So this is going to be a separate app from Apple Music that of course focuses on classical music. Apple's been working on this for quite a while, and it seems that we're getting close to a release of that. So there's nothing new here in 15.5 that you can visually see, but again, there are more references to it in the code, which means it should be coming soon. Now, if we look at the release notes here for 15.5 beta 1, there's only one thing mentioned, and it's related to universal control. So if you use that, you should be aware that universal control requires all devices to be on the latest betas, at least for this first beta here. So you can see the known issue says universal control in this release is not compatible with macOS 12.3 and 15.4. And the only workaround is just to use it on macOS 12.4 and the beta of 15.5. So basically you have to be updated is what it's saying to use universal control. Now, as far as the performance go, my first impressions are that the performance is actually pretty good. It feels smooth, especially for a first beta, but I was on 15.4.1 and it was just as smooth on there. So we'll run a Geekbench test here to see if the scores are any better or worse, but overall first impressions are that it feels pretty good. So we got a 1738 on the single core and a 4899 on the multi-core. So you can see that compared to 15.4 here. Pretty nice results there in the Geekbench test. Of course, that's not always indicative of much better performance, but I would expect, at least as good as 15.4.1, if not a little bit better. Now, as far as the battery life goes, again, I would expect battery life to be about the same as 15.4.1. I'm sure whatever fix that Apple put in to 15.4.1 has also been transported over to 15.5 beta 1. So I would expect about the same battery life as you get on 15.4.1. But again, if you're on iOS 15.4 and you maybe didn't want to delete your beta profile to install 15.4.1, if you update to 15.5 beta 1, you should see a nice improvement in battery life, even though it is still a first beta. All right, so now what is next for Apple? So next up is 15.5 beta 2, and I would not be surprised if Apple skipped next week and just released the second beta on the week of the 18th, maybe right there on Tuesday, the 19th. And the reason I say that is because there's not really a ton of new features or changes in this update, but we are still expecting to see these betas last until the end of May. So for that to happen, Apple would need to skip at least 1 week at some point in the beta cycle, and I would expect that with the first beta. We may even see that in the second beta as well. So beta 2 might come next week on the 12th, but I think more than likely it's going to be the following week on the 19th. And then according to Mark Gurman, we can expect the final release of iOS 15.5 to come around WWDC, which we now know is on June 6th. So maybe the final week of May right there is a possibility, but we'll have to wait and see as time gets closer. Now also, I would not be surprised to see a 15.4.2 at some point in April as well, given the fact that we're not going to see a final release until sometime in mid to late May. So be on the lookout for that as well. That should fix any other bugs or security issues that Apple comes across that they need to fix before 15.5 drops. And as I mentioned earlier, Apple did also announce the Worldwide Developers Conference today. And you can see here, this is the graphic for it, and it's going to take place on June 6th through the 10th. So these are the exact dates that I predicted in a video back in January, and I will be making a video on what to expect at this event and also about iOS 16, a few more rumors about iOS 16. So expect that video most likely tomorrow, but that was also announced today, which is probably also the reason Apple released a 15.5 beta 1. Oh, and I should also mention that I will be going live for this event here on YouTube on June 6th. So definitely stay tuned for that. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That is iOS 15.5 beta 1. Really not too much new here in this update. Again, I would expect a battery drain fix for those that did not update to 15.4.1. But aside from that, you're really only going to see bug fixes and security updates in 15.5. We may see some more features and changes added throughout the beta stages, but I would not get your hopes up too high. You're not going to see anything major in this update throughout the entire beta stages. So just keep that in mind. Apple is really starting to focus on iOS 16 at this point in time. But nonetheless, if you guys enjoyed this video, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. And of course, make sure to subscribe for more iOS 15 updates. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.